Hello student, I am Professor Smita Jha and I am here to discuss research methodology with its objectives. Research objective, which is very important aspects of research persuasion. So, let us see that how to decide objectives of the research. Research is more than a set of skills examining critically the various aspects of our day to day. It can understate and formulating guiding principles that govern a particular procedure and developing and testing new theories that contribute to the advancement of practice and profession. As a professional, one might be interested in finding answer to the theoretical questions such as which is the most effective intervention for a particular problem, what causes X or what are the effects of Y, what is the relationship between two phenomena, what is the best way of finding out community attitude towards an issue, which is the best way to find out the effectiveness of particular law in the society. A research objective is defined as a clear and concise statement of the specific goals and aims of a research study. It outlines what the research intends to accomplish and what they hope to learn or discover through their research. Research objectives are crucial for guiding the research process and ensuring that the study stays focused and on track. Objectives can help you stay focused and steer your research in the required direction. They help to define and limit the scope of your research, which is important to efficiently manage your resources and time. The objectives help to create and maintain the overall structure and specify two main things: the variables and the methods of qualifying the variables. A good research objective defines the scope of the study, gives direction to the research, helps maintain focus and avoid diversion from the topic, minimizes wastage of resources like time, money and energy. Research objectives can be broadly classified into general and specific objectives. General objectives state what the research expects to achieve overall, while specific objectives break this down into smaller logically connected parts, each of which addresses various parts of research problem. General objectives are the main goals of the study and are usually fewer in number, with specific objectives are more in number because they address several aspects of the research problem. A research objective, also known as a goal or an objective, is a sentence or question that summarizes the purpose of your study or test. In other words, it is an idea you want to understand deeper by performing research. Objective should be the driving force behind every task you assign and each question that you ask. These objectives should be centered on specific features or processes of your product. By having a solid understanding of information you need when running your usability study, you will be able to better stay on track throughout your development process. Before you write your objective, you need a problem statement which you can source from your support team and the frequent customer issues they encounter, negative customer reviews or feedback from social media. From there, your objective might look like: do people find value in this new product ideas? Or how do our competitors describe their offerings compared to us? Now, key characteristics of research objectives include clarity. Research objectives should be clearly defined and easy to understand. One should ensure there is no space for ambiguity or misinterpretation. Specificity. Objectives should be specific and narrowly focused on the aspects of the research topic that the study intends to investigate. They should answer the question of what or which rather than how or why. Measurability. Research objectives should be formulated in a way that allows for measurement and evaluation. This means that there should be a way to determine whether the objectives have been achieved or not. Relevance. Objectives should be relevant to the research topic and align with the overall research question or hypothesis. They should address important aspects of the subject matter. Realistic. Objectives should be attainable within the constraint of the study, including time, resources and feasibility. Time bound. Research objectives may have associated timelines or deadlines to indicate when the research aims should be accomplished. Research objectives help researchers stay focused on the purpose of their study and guide the development of research methods, data collection and analysis. They also serve as a basis for evaluating the success of the research once it is completed. In the context of a research project, research objectives typically follow the formulation of a research question or hypothesis and serve as a roadmap for conducting the study. Research objectives describe concisely what the research is trying to achieve. They summarize the accomplishments a researcher wishes to achieve through the project and provides direction to the study. First, research is an organized investigation of a problem in which there is an attempt to gain solution to a problem. Second, to get right solution of a right problem, clearly defined objectives are very important. Clearly defined objectives enlighten the way in which the researcher has to proceed. Characteristics of research objective. Research objective is a concrete statement describing what the research is trying to achieve. A well-worded objective will be a SMART, that is S for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for realistic and T for time bound. Research objectives should be relevant, feasible, logical, observable, unequivocal and measurable. Objective is a purpose that can be reasonably achieved within the expected time frame and with the available resources. The objective or research project summarizes what is to be achieved by the study. The research objectives are the specific accomplishment the researchers hope to achieve by their study. The objective includes obtaining answers to research questions or testing the research hypothesis. The main aim of research is to find out the hidden truth that has not yet been discovered through the application of scientific procedures. Each research study has its own specific purposes, but these are some objectives of research in broad groupings. First, to gain familiarity with a phenomenon or to achieve new insight into it, that is exploratory or formative studies. Second, to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation or group, that is descriptive research studies. Third, to determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else, that is diagnostic research studies. Last, to test a hypothesis of a causal relationship between variables, that is hypothesis testing research study. Now, research objective, some example, we may go through some example. Problem statement is that biodiversity losses are accelerating in the forest of northeast India. While measures are being taken by diverse players to stem these losses, there has been no formal study to quantify or compare the effects of the step taken. Now, research question: how do interventions by government research institute compare with actions by indigenous people in managing plant biodiversity loss in the forest of Meghalaya, India? And research hypothesis: actions and interventions by indigenous people and local communities are more effective than interventions by government research institutes in plant genetic resource conservation in the forest of Meghalaya. Now, research objective if we talk about to investigate and compare the impact of the effectiveness of plant genetic resource conservation measures by research institute and those by indigenous people and local communities in the forest of Meghalaya, to examine the ecological outcomes of a specific conservation practices followed by local communities in Meghalaya, to identify a specific plant species rescued by local communities in Meghalaya in the last few years. When should I write research objective and how should they be prioritized? Writing and refining your research objective should come after you have a clear problem statement and before you decide on a research method and test plan to execute your study. After you have written a rough draft of your research objective, the link might not even be dry. When stakeholders get involved by offering you an abundance of objectives, to figure out what to tackle first, ask your stakeholders to prioritize their needs. This step could happen via email or in a meeting, but another method could be to list out all of the possible objectives in a Google form and have everyone rearrange the list into their ideal order. As you familiarize yourself with an issue and the way scholars have talked about it, take note of their specific ways they talk about the issue and consider why that is. That is how you develop a rhetorical awareness of how research is constructed. So, when you read, read like a researcher. Consider what is said about an issue and how it is said. Identify the historical situation of the piece of writing. This includes the context in which it is written, the audience for whom it is written and its purposes. Every research assimilates the objectives which come from objectivism. Objectivism means anything independent from personal perception. Here, independence means remaining true to the conscientious judgment of one's mind without internal or external bias. Objectives should be bias free, related to or based on verifiable evidence or facts instead of an attitude, belief or opinion. Objectivity is an attitude on the part of the investigator, detached, unprejudiced and open to whatever the evidence may reveal. Alternatively, it may be applied to the method of investigation employed or to its outcomes, some theory or substantive knowledge claim. In other words, it is an unbiased observation of facts in the light of described objectives of the research, personality traits, perception and personal factors of the researcher shall not influence the research. In every research, the researcher claims some of the objects like an ontological claims that there is a reality in itself existing independently of the human mind. An epistemological claim that this reality may be known by the human mind, and a semantic claim that our language or discouragement is connected with knowledge of reality in such a way that we may make literal and increasingly accurate descriptions and explanations. How one plans, executes and interprets research study will depends on one's response to the claim of objectivism. Objectives determining the research aim leads naturally to determining its objectives. Research objectives are more specific than the aim and relate directly to the research question. They may be divided into primary and secondary objectives and should be closely related to the research question, cover all aspects of the problem, a specific, ordered in a logical sequence, achievable, take into consideration the available resources including time and mutually exclusive of each other. Well, Johnson and Christensen offer 5 typical research objectives. like exploration, description, explanation, prediction and influence. Qualitative and quantitative research study can be linked to one or more of these 5 research objectives. Exploration involves using mainly inductive methods to discover a concept, construct, phenomenon or situation and advance understanding, hypothesis or generalization. Description involves identifying and describing the antecedents, nature and etiology of a phenomenon. Explanation involves developing theory to explain the relationship among concepts or phenomena and determine reasons for the existence of events. Prediction refers to using pre-existing knowledge or theory to predict what will occur at a later point in time. Influence relates to the manipulation of the setting or variables to produce an anticipated outcome. Doran's criteria can be applied when setting research objectives. These are specific, be exact about what you are going to accomplish. Measurable, quantify the objectives, appropriate, align with the needs of the target audience. How to write research objective? Research objectives can be written using certain steps. First, brainstorming your objectives. State your main research question clearly and concisely. Describe the ultimate goal of your study, which is similar to the research question, but state the intended outcome more definitively. Divide this main goal into subcategories to develop your objectives. Limit the number of objectives. Assess each objective using a SMART. Using the right language, start each objective with an action verb like assesses, compare, determine, evaluate, which makes the research appear more actionable. Use a specific language without making the sentence data heavy. Writing the research objective, the most common section to add the objectives is introduction and after the problem statement. Add the objective to the abstract. State the general objective first, followed by a specific objective. Formulating research objectives has the 5 steps which could help researcher to develop a clear objective. First, identify the research problem, review past studies on subjects similar to your problem statement, identify the research gaps the current study should cover based on your literature review, define the research question based on the gaps identified, revise, relate the research problem based on the defined research question and the gap identified, identify and write general and specific objective, incorporate the objectives into the study. Advantages of research objective: maintains the focus and direction of the research, optimizes allocation of resources with minimal wastage, save times, act as a foundation for defining appropriate research question and hypothesis, provide measurable outcome that can help evaluate the success of the research, determines the feasibility of the research by helping to access the availability of required resources, ensure relevance of the study to the subject and its contribution to existing literature. How many research objectives do I need? That is again frequently asked question. The type of research you do will depend on the stage of product development you are in. Each stage of development has different research objectives and different questions that need to be answered. And once you have decided on a problem statement, you could either have one or multiple research objectives that tie back to the statement. How should your objective be stated? Another frequently asked question. Your objective should be stated using action verbs that are specific enough to be measured. For example, to compare, to calculate, to assess, to determine, to verify, to calculate, to describe, to explain and alike. Avoid the use of vague non-active verbs such as to appreciate, to understand, to believe, to study, because it is difficult to evaluate whether they have been achieved. Further frequently asked question, can research objective change during the study? Revising research objectives during the study is acceptable in situation when the selected methodology is not progressing towards achieving the objective, or if there are challenges pertaining to resources. One thing to keep in mind is the time and resources you would have to complete your research after revising the objective. Thus, as long as your problem statement and hypothesis are unchanged, minor revisions to the research objectives are acceptable. So, if we talk of the difference between research question and objective, it can be that while research questions are broad statements, guide the overall direction of the research, research objective is a specific measurable goals that the research aims to achieve. While research question identify the main problem, the research objective defines the specific outcome the study aims to believe. While research question used to generate hypothesis or identify gaps in existing knowledge, research objective used to establish clear and achievable targets for the research. Research question not mutually exclusive with research objective, while research objective should be directly related to the research question. Research question like how do employees perceive digital transformation in retail HR, human resource. Research objective can be to assess employee perception of digital transformation in retail HR, that is human resources. Are research objective the same as hypothesis? This is another frequently asked question. No. Hypotheses are predictive theories that are expressed in general terms. Research objectives, which are more specific, are developed from hypotheses and aim to test them. A hypothesis can be tested using several methods, and each method will have different objective because the methodology to be used could be different. A hypothesis is developed based on observation and reasoning. It is a calculated prediction about why a particular phenomenon is occurring. To test this prediction, different research objectives are formulated. Research objective at an overall level can be divided into general objective, that is broad goals of your study, a specific objective, precise measurable outcomes that you hope to achieve. Now, general objective, let us see for example, to examine the therapeutic efficacy of convalescent plasma from donor with a previous diagnosis of severe COVID-19 infection. A specific objective to determine whether administration of convalescent plasma less than 72 hours after the onset of symptoms could delay disease progression in individuals with mild COVID-19 infection. How to write good research objective and what should be the characteristic? So, again it is a SMART that one can follow, S for a specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for relevant and T for time bound, like question. So, when should I write research objective and how should they be prioritized? Writing and refining your research objective should come after you have a clear problem statement and before you decide on a research method and test plan to execute your study. You can also use targeted question to prioritize your research. Now, some of the example of the research objective, the way you write your research objective may change slightly depending on the way of the study you are conducting, like descriptive study. Describe existing measure to prevent parent to child transmission of domiciclofin infection in rural Moxwansia. Now, exploratory study to explore the disease burden faced and coping strategies used by commonly community dwelling patients and mild to moderate anatomical disorder. Similarly, we have analytical study where that can be more analyzed and comparative analysis means two recently developed preoperative score system. Now, formulating research objective, what to keep in mind? To make sure you have developed a strong research objective, and for that you have to follow such steps like decide what do you want to achieve, list the key variables in your study including who your sample is, means your data or your resources, identify the key outcomes you are tracking or measuring, include time if relevant, ensure testability Ensure that your hypothesis is testable using appropriate research methods and technique. Define how to measure or manipulate the variable to gather empirical evidence supporting or refuting your hypothesis. Write and refine. Write down your hypothesis in a clear and concise statement. Revise and refine it as needed to improve clarity and specificity. The objectives of the research provide a basic framework to the inquiry. They specify the goals and direction of the investigation, thereby ensuring that all efforts contribute toward attaining a specified outcome. If research objectives are not clearly defined, then the study will be disorganized and less effective. In addition, clearly defined research objectives enhance the significance of findings from a research study. By correlating the inquiry with literature, it will be possible to find knowledge gaps that aid in contribution towards more academic discourse and practical applications. So, the formulation of research objective is a critical step. Since a research objective is an explicit declaration of the purpose of an investigation. This focuses the efforts of the researcher, making sure that there is a clarity within the process of the research. Now, what are the components of research objectives? The objectives of research include several fundamental components that guide the investigation. Precision is critical. Each objective must be clearly stated, avoiding ambiguity so that the reader can understand the inner intent without delay. Research objectives should also have the characteristics of measurability. This means that the methods by which success is to be measured must be defined, whether in terms of quantitative data or qualitative insight. Research objectives are an essential part of an scholarly investigation. They provide a structure to guide researchers through the complexity that is inherent in their work. Clear objective guide the research process, yet also ensure that the literature review is qualitative in character and grounded. If these strategies are adopted, researchers will be able to develop good objectives that can result in meaningful findings and help improve their areas of specialization. After you have written a rough draft of your research objective, the ink might not even be dry when stakeholders could get involved by offering you an abundance of objectives to prioritize. To figure out what to tackle first, ask your stakeholder to rank their need. Now, to sum up proper research objective, first expand your knowledge base. One of the greatest benefits of research is to learn and gain a deeper understanding. Second, keeps you up to date. Well, research encourages you to discover the most recent information available. Updated information prevents you from falling behind and help you present accurate information. You are better equipped to develop ideas or talk about a topic when you are trying to explore it. Builds your credibility. Research provides you with a good foundation upon which you can develop your thoughts and ideas. Next, sparks connection. Take any field, non-profit organization, you will see how they have a strong research supported by real life story. Research also becomes the base upon which real life connections and impact can be made, and this encourages curiosity. So, we have already established research is mostly about using existing information to create new ideas and opinions. In the process, it sparks curiosity as you are encouraged to explore and gain deeper insight into a subject. Curiosity leads to higher level of positivity and lower level of anxiety. With this, I conclude the discussion. Let us meet in another discussion. Till then, thank you very much.